Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. We are here with president of the Deniz Öncü fan club, PozzA, as he's known in the server. Say hi, PozzA.
Hey guys, how's it going?
So this is the first in the series of fan interviews I'll be doing over the off-season. So we'll just jump straight into the questioning, even though I think we know the answer to the very first question, which is going to be, who is your favourite motorcycle rider on the grid currently?
Well, I'd be lying if I said anything other than Deniz Öncü, obviously.
And what is it about him that you admire?
For a while it's pretty much just been his riding style. Sometimes for better or worse, his aggressiveness. More recently just his character, how he can be funny, doesn't care what anyone thinks.
KTM definitely seem to have those vibe of riders, especially with like Acosta and I suppose Binder and Miller as well. Is that what drew you to him initially, or was it something else?
I mean, yeah, I'd say that's what drew me to him. Also just the group of people he has around him in Toprak, his brother Chan.
He does come with his own fan club, really, so that's always quite a fun vibe to have. And when did you first become a fan of Grand Prix racing as a whole? Do you remember any particular moment in time when you just started watching, or?
Well, just growing up, both of my parents watched it, so I kind of just sat along watching it with them. Pretty much fell in love instantly, let's be real.
It's one of those sports that when you just watch it, you do sort of get hooked. So, can you name your top 3 moments that sort of stand out to you from any race in history, basically, or anyone that you've watched?
Well, starting from this year, obviously, Germany 2023 with Deniz winning at the last corner on Sasaki.
He got that a lot last year, Sasaki, didn't he? Or this year. It's still this year.
I ended up winning one in the end, but
The very last one.
yeah, just with the week before having lost the win, like 50 meters from the line.
Who was it that he lost it to? Was it Holgado?
Yeah.
I guess when Dennis did the same thing back to him, that probably would be another one of your top 3.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And so what is one moment that doesn't involve Deniz Öncü that you find particularly exciting or memorable?
Probably Pedro Acosta winning from pit lane in 2021 in his second race.
Yeah, that's a pretty bold statement and hard to forget, that's sure. So, what would your favourite race circuit be?
It'd probably have to be Phillip Island, honestly.
Is that just because you're Australian, or?
I mean, that's probably part of it, but it just always seems to be a track that produces really good races in all classes.
To be fair, Moto3 is sort of, you could have a good race in a straight line.
Yeah, pretty much. But even Moto2 and MotoGP usually pretty good around Phillip Island.
You're definitely not wrong there. It's my favourite track as well. At least I think it is. I'm probably a bit biased towards Sachsenring, and that's only because of Mark. But you know. So, are there any specific motorcycle racing related content, like books, documentaries, that you'd recommend to other fans, be them new or fans that have watched as long as you?
There's been a few of the documentaries over the years, like the Faster whole series, Hitting the Apex from 2015. One that I especially watched growing up was The Doctor, the Tornado, and the Kentucky Kid, following Rossi, Edwards, and Hayden. for, I think, 2005 Laguna Seca.
Is that a movie or a documentary?
I'm pretty sure it was a documentary style.
Huh, I'm definitely gonna have to look that up because I've never heard of it. Ah, you've linked it to me, and I will put a link in the description for anyone who's listening to this. So, Grand Prix racing is known for its technical innovation and advancements. Are there some technical aspects of the sport that interest you, or do you just watch purely for, I suppose, the racing and the thrill of the racing?
I mean, I like finding out just sort of the basics of how the bikes work and like what all the different parts do. And a big part of that's listening to Simon Crafar's Tech Talks. They're pretty interesting and he explains them in a good way for newer fans to understand.
Yeah, Simon Crafar is definitely, once you get used to his talking style, he's quite good with all that tech knowledge and that sort of thing to listen to. I definitely agree. And I suppose that leads on to the future of MotoGP. Obviously, we've got Moto E and or Moto E. Actually, do you pronounce it Moto E or Moto E?
I say Moto E.
Moto E. I think I'm just going to stick with that. I never sort of decide, and I just call them whatever comes into my head at the time. So let's stick with Moto E. But are there any changes in the future that you'd like to see to the sport, or how do you see this sport developing?
I mean, ideally, I know everyone says this a lot, but lowering the aerodynamics and rider aid sort of side of things, that'd be good. Because I feel like the racing sort of recently hasn't been as great as it has been in the past. Uh, and that's mainly because the riders only really make a difference on the brakes.
And would you overall blanket ban them, or would you just restrict the air on things to certain amounts of it and things like that?
Probably just restrict them because even 2018, 2019, sort of when they were just coming in, the racing was still pretty good, like they were still close races.
And I suppose on that topic, I'm just gonna freeball now because I've ran out of the questions that I actually sent you. So let's talk about the MotoGP stewarding because I know you're as frustrated with it as I am at the moment. If you could improve it, what's the first step you'd take in improving it?
Just trying to work towards sort of a lot more consistency throughout all three classes. Because there's some incidents you see in like MotoGP where the riders get away with it, so then all the young riders in Moto3 think, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go do that now," and then they cop a lot harsher penalties than the GP riders do.
With that, I always think, and this is just my opinion, is that the MotoGP guys should be able to get away with more than the Moto3 guys because they've got all the more experience and that sort of thing. I suppose the stewards could communicate that if they are going down that road, but I agree at the moment the inconsistency is just absolutely horrendous.
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree, but in the same token, say you're an 18-year-old rider in Moto3 and you see the MotoGP guys all trying to like follow around for a tow sitting up in the middle of the track. You think, oh, well, these guys I'm supposed to look up to, they're doing this, so why am I not allowed to? But it's just my thoughts.
That's probably because you're quite young and so you can think like a young person, whereas I'm just like old now. So I'm just like, oh, now the kids can wait. Speaking of how young you are, actually, can you remember what the first race you ever watched was? Or what's your first memory of watching MotoGP? Or two or three?
Uh, Honestly couldn't put a date on when I first started watching, but some of my earliest memories come from around 2011, 2012. Uh, just watching Stoner win a lot as an Australian. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, as a Kiwi, I'm obviously a massive fan of Stoner, and I can still remember those quite clearly as well. Because I think that was around the time that I first started like watching it again as an adult. So basically, same time scale.
Also, just seeing some of the current MotoGP riders like Maverick Vinales, Brad Binder, Jack Miller coming through the ranks. That was around about that time as well.
That's quite interesting because it would be the fact that we've both watched them as they've come up through the ranks, like you said, and it gives us a bit more of a broad oversight as to how they got there into MotoGP and things like that. Because we have to admit, Miller's performance this year wasn't exactly. So, if you could recommend someone go back and watch a single race to get them hooked into MotoGP, or a new fan and they only had one race to watch, what would it be?
I mean, almost any Moto3 race, if you want to see really close racing, would be good. But just purely MotoGP, something like maybe Assen 2018, or I know you're not going to agree with this, but Assen 2015, Rossi versus Marquez,
I mean,
one of those types of races.
yeah, see, I go with Assen 2018, and the other one I actually do go for is Phillip Island 2015 for another really close race. So, similar, but I guess I picked Phillip Island because Marquez won, even if that was the start of the shitstorm. Which actually, I'm going to ask. We won't dive into depth, but are you more of a Marquez fan or more of a Rossi fan?
Well, growing up, my dad was, and still is, a pretty massive Rossi fan, so I sort of leant more towards that side, if I'm
Ah,
honest.
PozzA. That's it. Pod deleted. Never seeing the light of day. No, I'm kidding, of course. And one more topic. Let's talk MotoGP merch. If you could own one bit of GP merch, what would it be?
I mean, it's not really GP, but in general, getting some KTM IO merch from Moto2 and Moto3 has been on my list for a while. But, um, I don't know, honestly.
I was meaning GP, as in I call all the classes GP because they're all sort of like Grand Prix races, and it's just easier for me to classify them that way. Yeah, I kind of actually also want some KTM IO merch. It's a shame we can't just buy it online. Hopefully they'll have some at Phillip Island 2025.
Hopefully.
Have you decided on your sign for Phillip Island 2025?
Still got a couple of ideas in the works, but
Still
still
undecided?
got time, so.
Yes, there is plenty of time, to be fair. Recording. We've got 22 races next year. Do you think that's too many, or are you someone who would like to see more?
Uh, I mean, with the sprints, it might be maybe one or two races too much, but I feel like even going back to 2021, I think there was 19, 20 races. I feel like that was a pretty good length.
And so, are you a fan of the sprint races actually on that?
I think they're alright, they just probably could have been executed a bit better.
Awesome. I'm pretty much in the same boat as you with both those answers. So moving back to talking about Deniz, with him moving up to Moto2 next year, roughly where do you think he'll place? And give me a realistic answer. Don't hit me with a P1 in the championship.
Um, well, just looking at 2023, the top rookie, Garcia, finished 15th on the Pons bike, which is still pretty good. Probably top of mid-range, lower of the like top championship bikes. And with Deniz on the IO bike, obviously there'll be that expectation to be up there pretty quickly. But anywhere in the top sort of 10 to 20 range, I feel like would be pretty respectable for a first season.
For a first season, yep, I think that'd be quite respectable, especially given all the changes that they'll have to get used to going from Moto 3 to Moto 2. Although I do think Moto Moto2 will suit him more. And I suppose
It should.
continuing, it definitely should, given his size and how small those Moto3 bikes are. So, where do you see him ending up? Do you think he'll move up to MotoGP? And if you do think he'll move to MotoGP, which team will he go to?
I mean, obviously, I hope he eventually gets to MotoGP. Um, Depending on how quickly he can get up there, if it's if he does really well first season, obviously, unless he wins the title, he probably won't be going up. But uh, if he can get some solid results, get in championship contention, sort of around the time when KTM end up getting their third team in MotoGP, I can see him slotting in there because he's been with KTM pretty much all his life, even before he got to World Championship level. So I feel like it'd be with one of the KTM teams, but if they don't offer him something, I can see him going somewhere else.
And where else do you think he'd go, aside from the fact it'd be if any bike had a seat, basically? So, say it's just KTM that has too much talent for their bikes, and all the other teams had a seat free. Where do you think he'd choose to go then? I suppose a good way to do it
Uh,
would be ignoring whatever bike is good at the time, just based on the team culture
yeah.
and the team vibes.
I could see him going somewhere like maybe Aprilia. If Toprak was still at Yamaha, I could probably see him going there. But um, yeah, no, maybe like an Aprilia. If Honda were better than they are now, I could see him going there maybe. But
To be fair, it would be quite difficult for Honda to be any worse than they are now, so hopefully they'll be better.
nothing would surprise me.
To agree there, we could clearly see Yamaha and Honda just leaving the sport altogether. So, now I asked you to do this off, I don't know what we call this, off podcast, but I wanted to do predictions for Moto3, Moto2, and MotoGP. And I think we'll probably just jump straight into Moto3. So give me your top 5 predictions, and then I'll go after you, and we'll see how wildly different our predictions are. And I'm going to hold you to this post-season, by the way.
Again, I didn't plan any of this, so this is a lot of free ball.
That's all right. Let's see what you got.
I feel like the obvious 1 and 2 prediction would be some variation of Danny Holgado and David Alonso. If Holgado can keep up his sort of first half of the season form from last year, he could be hard to beat, but David Alonso's just got so much talent. So, 1 or 2, I'd say probably one of those two, or both of them.
It's supposed to be a top 5, mate.
I know, I'm getting there. um, do I have to place like actual places on this, or can I just say these 5 in some random order?
Nah, give it to me in actual places, 'cause it's way more fun that way.
Okay, fine. Go David Alonso champion.
Mhm.
Holgado, hopefully a close second. If Ortola can keep up a bit more consistency this year, I'll put him in third. Rueda will be, I'd say, the lead sort of rider at KTM IO this year, with Deniz gone and Zuratuza being the rookie. And just because he's got a bit more experience this year, we'll put David Munoz in fifth. So there's the top 5. Alonso, Holgado, Ortola, Rueda, Munoz.
That's quite similar to mine. Um,
Doesn't
my
surprise me.
my P1 is David Alonso, P2 Holgado, and P3 Ortola. So we're the exact same there. But then in P4, I'm going with pure copium here and going Joel Kelso. And in P5, I'm going Colin Vire. So I'm not really sure where Kelso came from in my predictions, but I'm just rolling with it. He could do it. You never know.
I honestly forgot about Via.
This is why you got the pre-planning and the research pause.
um, nah, Via close sixth. That's what I'm saying.
There you go. That counts. So, what are your Moto 2 predictions?
Um, got a bit more of an idea on this one, I'll say. Uh, Arbolino. Just because Acosta this year made Arbolino look like he didn't have that great a year, but you take Acosta out of the equation, and Arbolino, he would have looked a lot more impressive. So we'll say Arbolino champion. Just with Vietti on the KTM he could be quite dangerous. But Aldeguer second, I'll put, just edged out because he's on the speed up. Um, put Vietti third. Um, uh, Aaron Canet, I know you'll want him higher up, but I feel like he's always sort of up there, but not winning races. So he can go into fourth. Um,
Savage, but true.
and fifth, I feel like Philip Salach. He could be quite impressive this year. Obviously being with a higher up team on the grid, so put Salach in fifth.
Yeah, I think Salak is definitely going to be one to watch, even though he didn't really make my top five. I've gone with similar to you again. Obviously, we're same page. Tony Arbolino P1, Thurman Aldeguer P2, and you were absolutely right. I did want Canet higher, so he's gone P3 for me. And then I've gone totally different to you. I've gone Somkat Chantra and Jake Dixon for my P4 and my P5s. So similar, but only the top three we've got together, I suppose.
I'm not surprised, honestly.
Moto 2 is one of those ones that you feel is a lot easier to predict than Moto 3 and MotoGP.
It normally is, honestly.
So then, what are your MotoGP predictions? I guess this is the one that could be the most controversial.
Um, I mean, the favourite again would probably be Bagnaia, but obviously Marquez on. Is he on the 23 bike or the 24 bike?
He'll be on 23 bike.
Okay. Well, I mean, they've shown in the past that being on the year-older bike for at least maybe the first half of the season before the newly updated bike sort of develops, being on the bike with like all the data already there and having 7 other bikes to grab data from, yeah, Marquez could be dangerous, but just because I want to see a new champion, I'm gonna have Martin in P1.
Interesting.
Just pure hope that. If go Bagnaia P2 just to be safe. Put Mark P3. If Bastianini can stay fit, put him in P4. I'm pretty much just going Ducatis.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, Bastianini, Bastianini P4, and just to round it out, go Bezecchi P5.
The full.
Another year of Ducati domination.
Yeah, the full Ducati lockout there. I suppose that's probably quite safe given the level they've dominated. I haven't gone full Ducati, and of course, maybe this is me fangirling, but I have put Marc Marquez as the world champion. As much as I would love to see Jorge Martin do well next year, he's not even in my top five, which is a bit savage. I've put Marc Marquez in P1, Pecco Bagnaia in P2, Enea Bastianini P3, and that's where my Ducatis end, because I put Brad Binder P4, although I really like him to win the championship more than anyone else probably next year. And then I've gone Maverick Vinales for P5. I think he's going to be the top Aprilia next year.
I could see that.
So we're quite similar, but also very different on the MotoGP side of them. That's surprising, actually.
Hmm.
I definitely think in the first half of next year, Marc Marquez is going to dominate because, as you said, that older bike always does better in the first half of the season before the development occurs, I suppose.
That's if he can stay fit.
If he can stay fit. Well, the Ducati's a lot more stable than the Honda, from what we've seen anyway.
I feel like Mark could just go back to what he used to do on the Honda, just having sort of slow end, front end, or slow front end crashes, just pushing the front a bit too hard. I could see that happening a fair bit next year, but
I think Sepang, the test's going to be quite interesting to get more of a vibe for how he's going to be doing on the bike, and he'll actually be able to talk about it now.
should be interesting.
Okay, I think that's where we're going to leave it for today.
I just want to say a big thank you to PozzA for coming on this week's show. And as always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed. We will be back next week talking some more shit. Thank you.